but still ask your questions. Just know everybody can hear.
Hi, Christian. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Wes. Hey, Peter.
Wes, how are you guys? Christian, how are you?
Good. Haven't actually met yet, but I'd like to at some point.
Absolutely. I'll take you up on it.
All right.
I'm just waiting for things to get busy around here, you know?
I think the traffic right now is as thick as I've ever seen it, like right at this very moment, right at my office window.
Where are you, Christian?
You know the fence made of skis?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's your place?
Yeah, you know, Jonathan Schechter bequeathed the lease onto me in 1998. So it's been
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's kind of kept me here, to be very honest.
You inherited it with skis, or did Jonathan have the skis there already?
No, that was a lot of trips to Browsenby.
Yeah.
Did you build it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
I needed to figure out a way to keep the people from looking. So, you know, I've got that little dollar deposit where you have to put in $1 to take a photo, and it's funded my third home purchase in Jackson, Wyoming.
That's a lot of dollars.
Getting on that, but it certainly could have.
Man, I miss being able to be in the same space as everybody.
Right?
It's created, I was talking to a researcher today who's looking at soundscapes, and there's a project worldwide to try to document the impact of the decrease in jet travel around the world on sound pollution. And it's dropped more than anyone's ever seen since we've been flying.
Wow. Yeah, I live in Game Creek, and it's kind of, I've noticed that what I've noticed is that I notice it when I hear
You blipped out there. You notice it what?
I said, sorry, somebody called me in the middle. I noticed. How do we deal with this? Is there a way to turn it off so that your phone won't ring in the middle of this?
Oh, I guess we'll find out. You can do, if you go to Zoom and you go to preferences, you can go to, what is that? Turn off, or I think you have to go to your phone and you turn off notifications.
Yeah.
That should do it.
Boy, you're out of my league already, Christian.
My 9-year-old daughter taught me everything I know.
I know. I need my wife. Oh, there we go. Notification. My 5-month-old son is not quite there yet.
He'll be there sooner than you want.
Yeah.
Peter, where are you?
Sorry, I gotta unmute you there. We're over on Carnes and Glenwood.
Is that Snow King? Yeah, I guess it is, huh?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oh boy.
And yeah, our little guy's running around here someplace. He's hopped up on chocolate milk. So if there's any interruptions tonight, I apologize. He's a year and a half and wild as they get.
Espresso and a kitten and away they go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather be where you are than where I am right now.
Yeah, it's a tough night to beat right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm starting along a little bit for the colder nights to at least take care of the mosquitoes and let us get back into the hills without getting too bitten up. But I like
Here soon enough, I'm sure.
Yeah. It feels like next week is it's dipping and starting to go down a little bit in temps. That's good.
My squash is not happy about that, Christian.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Okay.
Cover 'em.
Whew, we got it all working. And let's see. Waiting for Greg and the incumbents. Where are the incumbents? They think they have this in the bag, huh? Does everybody know everybody?
How many folks we have?
Yeah, and we're waiting for Robin.
I'm gonna try to figure out how to fix my phone so it won't cut me off in the middle of a comment. Let's see. So Christian, you're saying settings and what were you saying?
Well, I mean, this is for a
Notifications.
computer, but yeah, if you go to notifications, are you on I'm on a Mac or a whatever.
I'm on an iPad and it's picking up my phone calls.
If you go to notifications, oh, we might have just gone above my pay grade.
Get your 9-year-old daughter in here.
I think you might be able to set like a do not disturb setting.
Yeah.
On my phone or on my iPad?
Should work on either.
How about that, Robin? I thought I disabled the waiting room.
So if you swipe up right here, you'll see like a moon looking thing.
Nice.
Hold on that guy, and then you can just do like do not disturb for however long.
Thanks, Jacob.
Hopefully that works.
Let's see if I can get there. Whoa.
Okay, and if anybody's watching the live stream, the live stream is about like a 20-second delay, so don't have the sound off in the same room or there'll be a weird echo. So FYI, if any of your fans are watching in the same room as you. Okay.
Jacob, what was that again? You go to this screen and then which one was it?
So it's like the moon, the like half moon looking icon right there, and you just click and hold on it.
Nice. Thank you. Learn something every day. Thank you.
I'm still a lot. How do you get to that screen, Jacob?
So if your phone's unlocked, you can kind of just like swipe up from the bottom. I think it depends on like what version of iOS you have too. If you have this is an older version, so it might be a little different.
Mine looks the same as yours.
The internet won't conk out from this.
So as a dinosaur, I appreciate you teaching me.
Yeah, all of us, right? Hey, Greg.
Good evening, guys. How's it going?
Good. Wow, look at you out in the middle of the park. Nice
Like
work.
the Schwabackers background. There you go.
Yeah, he did a screen.
I'm real estate there, Greg.
Yeah. I think we should put some affordable housing there.
Well, I'm not sure I figured it out. So
one more thing you could try, you could go into your settings and at the top you can search through your settings. So if you just search do not disturb, or it should just be like right here.
Now we're cooking. Yeah.
Worth a shot.
Jacob, did I run into you the other day? Were you where did I run into you?
I was at the softball fields. I think.
Softball, that's right. That's right. That was fun.
Yeah, our team's actually getting ready to play right now.
Uh-oh. We'll see you later then.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
Hey, Greg.
Wes, how are you?
Good. You?
I'm great. Although I'm smoked. We had Board of Equalization hearings all day today. So if any of you guys get elected, it's something to really look forward to. That's off the record, Billy and Jacob.
That's okay. I'm just dealing with kicking my roommate off watching Breaking Bad right now, so my internet doesn't cut out.
Okay, so everybody's here right now. We're going to start in 2 minutes, and I'll let Dee take over then and explain how it's going to go. But we're live on YouTube right now. So know that. And for all of you, keep your view on gallery view so you can see Susan with the time cards. And she will hold up this warning and that, and she'll ring a bell when it's time to. Very subtle, so it's not disruptive. And I will control what everyone sees on the YouTube live stream, and I will pan back and forth between gallery view when the media panelists are asking the questions, and then do speaker view when each of you are speaking and sharing your answers. Any questions about those logistics?
Can you send me the YouTube live stream?
Yes, I think I did.
Did you already?
Did you? Yeah, did I do it? Did I send it to the wrong?
Oh, yeah, I've got it. Thank you.
Great.
Leah, do we mute ourselves or do you take care of that?
If you could mute yourselves, that would be great, but I can also do that. Yeah, so mute yourselves in between all of your answers and then unmute when you're ready to talk. Okay, otherwise D. And I will turn my camera off so that just all of you are on the screen and it looks nice and tidy. Great, Dee, you're up.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I am Dee Buckstaff, a member of the Wyoming League of Women Voters. And tonight's forum is sponsored by the Wyoming League of Women Voters, the Teton County Library, KHOL, WyoFile, Jackson Hole News and Guide, and Buck Rail. Our expectation is that tonight's forum will last about 90 minutes. We'll begin the evening with 2-minute introductions from the County Commission candidates. After the introductions, our media panel will ask questions. Our media panel consists of Robin Vincent from KHOL 89.1, Billy Arnold from the Jackson Hole News and Guide, and Jacob Gore from Buck Rail. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the questions on a rotating basis so that everyone has a chance to go first. Susan Dong, League of Women Voters member, is our timekeeper tonight, and she will indicate when time is running out so candidates can sum up their answers. Each candidate has 2 red cards, which most likely are not actual cards, and they can use it at any time worth up to 2 minutes, and they may be used as the candidate sees fit. If audience members are interested in proposing questions for the candidates, we have someone monitoring the streaming sites, and any questions posted there will be considered for asking at the very end of the questioning portion of our forum. We anticipate having enough time to add 2 or 3 questions. Candidates will then have 1 minute at the very end of the evening to give a summation or present closing remarks. So the way all the candidates look on my screen is Peter, Wes, Christian, Greg, and Natalia. So we'll start introductions with Peter.
Well, thank you, Dee, for the kind introduction, and thank you to the League of Women Voters, the Teton County Library, and to all of our media partners here tonight for hosting us. And a special thank you to all the viewers and listeners who are tuning in. My name's Peter Long, and I am running to be your next Teton County Commissioner. I had the good privilege of growing up here in the Valley. My great-grandparents homesteaded here in 1911. And as a family, we've been very fortunate to carry on that heritage going on now 5 generations. But it's not always been glamorous. You know, growing up, my mom worked multiple jobs to provide for my brother and I. We cleaned houses, we took out horseback rides, just about any odd job you can think of, we probably did just to make ends meet. And it was through the generous support of this community that I was able to attend college at the Ivy League, to start a career, and to meet my wife. And we've been back here in the Valley now for several years, and we know the challenges of what it means to be a working family here, to work multiple jobs, to help out with the family business, to struggle with the rising costs of childcare and healthcare, all the while to only feel like the dream of being able to call Teton County home get further and further out of reach. And that's why I'm running for Teton County Commissioner. From the outset, my purpose in running has been to be a voice for our working families and to ensure that Teton County is a place that our kids and future generations can call home. And a lot of that just boils down to common sense. It's zoning more working class neighborhoods, getting serious about transportation solutions. It's undoing burdensome rules on our small businesses and our workers. And it's not treating taxpayers like an ATM. Most importantly, it boils down to making the hard decisions and not pushing our problems down the road. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and look forward to a constructive conversation.
Okay, Wes, you're next.
Thanks, Steve. My name's Wes Gardner. I'm running for Teton County Commissioner. I first visited Jackson Hole as an 11-year-old in 1989, and I fell in love. 8 years later, like a character in I Can Ski Forever, I left Tennessee and never really looked back. 10 years ago, I made a crazy decision to open a toy store on the town square, and we've been growing ever since. I met my wife, Megan, playing ultimate frisbee on the field at the Center for the Arts, and we are now the very proud parents of a baby boy named Ren. It took me a long time to get here, but I'm relishing every moment of being a family man. And when I look into my son's eyes, I feel so blessed to be able to raise him in Teton County. Over the past few years, I've been paying close attention to decisions made by our local representatives. While I recognize that they have the best interests of our community at heart, I've been frequently frustrated by the unfortunate inefficiency, discord, and arrogance getting in the way of community solutions. How will I lead if I'm elected to represent you? I promise you I'm going to value your dollars. We all pay significant taxes every year. I promise to value those funds the same way that I value the funds of my businesses. Appropriately valuing public dollars is always important, but never more so when facing a global pandemic. I will not support our seeming obsession with hiring consultants at every decision point. Instead, I rely on staff, local expertise, and yes, our local electeds to be responsible for our decisions. Secondly, I'm a uniter. Too often I see opportunities missed because of inadequate communication between partners, both public and private. I will work to bring people and plans together. Only through productive compromise can we generate meaningful consensus. I'm going to say that again. Only through productive compromise can we generate meaningful consensus. At the end of the day, I'm a moderate independent who is committed to finding middle ground solutions for the benefit of our community. Third, I have a desire to listen. I know what it feels like to give public comment and feel unheard or ignored. I promise to listen to you with consideration, even if we disagree. I'm always open to new suggestions and arguments. This community is full of folks with informed and informative viewpoints. I will never pass up an opportunity to hear what you think and why you think it. Again, my name is Wes Gardner. I'm running for Teton County Commissioner, and I hope you will consider voting for me this fall. Thank you.
Okay, Christian, it's your turn.
Sorry. Well, thank you. And thanks to the League of Women Voters and Teton County Library, our very own Teton County Library, and local media for putting on tonight's forum and allowing us to share our thoughts with folks that are listening in. So my name is Christian. I'm a husband, a father, a conservationist. I've been in the Valley for about 27 years, and I believe in three things. First and foremost, protecting our Valley's wildlife and habitat, and then responsible growth and a Jackson Hole that works for all of us. So like so many folks here, I moved to the Tetons because I fell in love with them. And for the past couple of decades, I've climbed and skied as much as I probably possibly could, and maybe even a little bit more. And in the process, I've developed relationships, not only with these peaks, but with the men and women who, like me, were drawn to them, and then like me, remain for the friendships, collaborations, and community that they've inspired. And for nearly 30 years now, I've watched as our ability to navigate our very unique challenges become undermined by an agenda that seems to be prioritizing profit over the health and well-being of this place that we all collectively call home. And so I'm deeply concerned about what this means for our quality of life and the long-term resiliency of this place. And these current concerns have prompted me to run for Teton County Commission. So starting Alpinist Magazine in 2001 gave me experience balancing budgets and managing a team, and led me to believe human-powered outdoor rec can and should result in the stewardship of special places like this. My work with SHIFT has led to innovative collaborations with public health providers, land managers, and conservationists from around the country. It's also persuaded me to adopt what I call a place-first approach, and that's the belief that our collective long-term interests can and should take precedence over any special interest group's needs and desires. So place first forms the bedrock of my perspective for Jackson as well. Long-term vision and leadership strong enough to implement it has never been more important to our valley. If you want someone who believes in a place-first approach to Teton County, I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Okay, it's Greg's turn.
Thank you. I just want to thank the League of Women Voters, Teton County Library, the local media for hosting this and being available. My name is Greg Epstein. I'm currently serving as one of your county commissioners. And during uncertain periods like this, continuity of experienced leadership is paramount. As a result, I have decided to run again for the Teton County Commission. I truly believe our community will come together, prevail, and be stronger on the other side of this pandemic, but it's going to require a collaborative effort and tough decisions. In addition to addressing the health, economic, and social impacts of COVID-19 in Jackson Hole, I will continue to concentrate on existing issues that affect us day to day. I'll strive for an inclusive, safe, and healthy Teton County by approving appropriately funded and sited affordable and workforce housing. I will continue to work on optimizing the Valley's transportation system. I will continue to support policy that improves our carbon emissions and water quality issues. And I will advocate for social services to help our communities most in need. Additionally, I'm back. Okay. Additionally, anybody that's paid attention to my term, when appropriate, opportunities arise, I will continue to challenge the status quo of our current comprehensive plan and subsequent policies to help ensure a community-first approach on behalf of our county's future. Finally, my voting record has shown that I am a nonpartisan, practical leader who is not afraid to ask challenging questions, make difficult decisions, and steward essential relationships. All of the above mentioned issues will require informed insight, thoughtful deliberation, and experienced governance to keep the fabric of our community intact during these uncertain times.
Okay. Natalia, it's your turn.
Thank you. I'm Natalia Macker, and it's great to be here this evening. Thank you to all the partners for adapting to provide this important and necessary opportunity for civic engagement. 5 years ago, I joined the Teton County Commission and ended up exactly where I was supposed to be. I love local government. I love sharing this community's values beyond our borders. And I most especially love serving and working with a passionate and engaged community. A few short or long months ago, the veneer cracked open for all of us and the fragility of our systems was laid bare. We experienced the results of basic infrastructure like childcare being consistently underfunded. What happens when the invisible labor of women is consistently not valued? When access to healthcare and mental health services are uncertain, and when our economic sustainability asks us to make impossible choices. These previously hidden realities of the gaps in our system cannot be ignored. And while the pandemic has shown us the gaps, it has also presented us with an opportunity to make our community stronger as we look to the future. The health of our community is at the forefront for me as I look ahead to another term. Not only does this mean ongoing response to the pandemic, but it also means growing opportunities for working families through safe, stable housing and early childhood education and care. It means sustaining our ecosystem stewardship through climate action and water quality protections, and it means advancing equality in the equality state. I'll be the first to admit that I don't have a magic wand and that the solutions to these challenges won't be easy, but we cannot hold our breath and wait for our world to get back to normal. We've seen that normal did not work for many of our friends and our neighbors. As a working mom, I get things done, and I have a track record of action and building bridges. Outside of public life, I'm the artistic director of Off Square Theater, and of course, the proud mama of 2 young children. I look forward to our conversation this evening, and thank you again for joining us.
Great, thank you. So now we'll go to our first question, and Wes will be the get to go first this time. And I'm assuming that we're having the same order of media panelists. So no, who's going first then?
I believe Billy is going to start things off this time.
Okay, Billy,
Yep.
go ahead.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you for all the commissioner candidates for coming in tonight. Everyone's tuned in over YouTube to watch in. I'm on my phone, so if things start wigging out internet-wise, just yell and let me know. But the first question is about COVID-19. So in June, the Teton District Health Officer, Travis Riddell, asked for the Teton County Board of County Commissioners, the office that you all are running for, to vote on a resolution of support for his request for a countywide mask order, which he thought was necessary to help slow the spread of COVID-19. I want to acknowledge that there have been different messages from different state offices about how the state would consider a vote from the commissioners when thinking about approving the order. But for this question, I'm going to defer, as I have in my reporting, to what State Health Officer Alexia Harris told the News and Guide. Because her signature is necessary to get these health orders approved. What she said, and this is a paraphrase, is that local support is a factor that went into the decision-making process. The commission did ultimately vote on that resolution and did so unanimously, but about 3 weeks after the vote was requested. So I have it's a two-part question here. First part, slightly different for incumbents and people newly running for the office or running again for the office. For Commissioner Macker and Commissioner Epstein, why did you vote for that resolution? Then for Mr. Beckwith, Mr. Long, and Mr. Gardner, would you have voted for that resolution? Were you in office? And then for everybody who's running, what role should the county government, which is different statutory authority than the town, can't, for example, pass an enforceable health ordinance without the health officer's support. What role should the county government play in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic? So 2 questions there. Would you have voted for the resolution? If you did, why? And then for everybody else, what role should the county government play in the situation that we're in?
Billy, thanks for that question. Great question. You know, when you're making decisions about public health, it's important for me to err on the side of caution. As most of you know, I own a local business downtown, and I was faced with this decision when we reopened in the middle of May. And I decided that, look, we're going to require masks from day one. You know, I think it was May 15th or 17th. We've been requiring masks the whole time. And that was because I have humility when I think about, you know, my knowledge of how this virus is transmitted. And what I learned as I researched it is that airborne particles coming from an infected person are the main way that this virus goes from person to person, travels from person to person, and that masks dramatically reduce the amount of airborne particles that are floating in space. So, you know, we're in a cramped space down there. For me, it was a no-brainer. I felt like that was leadership. And I got a little pushback from a few customers, but you know, it turns out that was the right thing to do. And, you know, my frustration when it comes to the town and county, the town less so than the county, because the town's been more at the forefront, is that I don't want my local leaders to be reactive when it comes to a mask ordinance. You know, when we tell people to wear a mask, it's a matter of community safety. It's not a question of personal freedom for me. And so I absolutely would have voted. I would have voted a month and a half ago to require masks in the county. And I think the county government does have a role. Unfortunately, I think the federal government should be stepping up. I think the state government should be stepping up. I can speak as an individual business owner. It's really hard to make these decisions when you don't have somebody like Dr. Riddell giving you advice on what to do.
Thanks. Christian, it's your turn.
Wes, I couldn't agree more. This was a matter of public safety, and we have a fundamental responsibility to our community to keep them safe. You know, my wife's a doctor here in town. She's an OBGYN. And so every day we talk about the, you know, COVID is a constant topic of conversation. And I know that the guidance from the CDC and from the World Health Organization have been changing rapidly. And it seems like it's every single day. But you still err on the side of caution if you have a responsibility that you take seriously to the people that you represent. So I was really disappointed that we didn't see that sort of leadership of voting for the mask ordinance at the very first opportunity. It's something that I would have done because I just feel that we have an obligation to protect our community members. What role should the government play for this particular situation? I think we have to put the safety of our community first and foremost in every single decision that we're making. I can't understand what a more fundamental responsibility to our community members would be. So that's what I would do.
Greg, your turn.
Thank you. So actually sitting in the hot seat, I'll call it, when that first question about the resolution came up, you know, there was a lot of information gathering actually going on. You know, we had conversations with the sheriff, and there was conversations with the chief of police, and then understanding our statutory obligations or our ability to create rules as the Board of County Commissioners. And so we chose collectively not to initially vote on the resolution because there was still a lot of work to be done behind the scenes. There was I believe three legal iterations of the order that went back and forth between the county attorney's office and the Department of Health of Wyoming. So it actually took some time, and it was really serendipitous or coincidental that the day that we voted for the resolution unanimously, the order also was passed. But if you ask the legal team behind the scenes, it wasn't just cut and dry initially from the county health officer's order to the state. So easier said than done. I personally voted for the resolution at the end of the day because I wanted to give the county businesses more cover. I think probably Wes probably experienced it the most with people coming into his place of business and potentially not complying. I ultimately voted for that because I felt that these business owners, they don't need to be yelled at by people that don't want to comply. And so giving them a little bit more, whether it's a statement or it turned into a health order, just giving them a little more.
Okay, Natalia, it's your turn to answer next.
Thank you. As a mother and a leader in this community, it is important to me to keep everyone safe. It's also important to me as a leader that we model the behavior that we want to see from our community. And that's why I've been wearing a mask and have been encouraging everyone I know to wear a mask and trying to present what we are expecting and how we can work together to take care of each other. I also think it's important and necessary that we use the best available data and science to continue to adapt our response as we have new information. And very importantly, that we resource our public health infrastructure appropriately. A big piece of this, and I think this gets to the role of county government, is that we are inextricably linked with the state. And I have been and will continue to bring all of the resources and relationships that I can leverage in that regard to help tell the story of what's happening in our community and get our community the resources that we need. I also think the county has been and should continue to play a very critical role in convening many of the organizations that are working in emergency response. I had the chance to assist in some of that coordination early on and saw the amazing work that so many people in this community stepped up to do, to volunteer, and to pivot their organizations to responding. And the county has a role to play in that. And I will continue to encourage that to make sure that we can keep families housed, keep folks in quarantine fed, and that we are focused right now on how we can make sure that our children are being taken care of in school and with childcare.
Okay, Peter, it's your turn.
Okay, thank you. Well, first I want to take this opportunity to thank our healthcare workers and our public health officials. They've been making great sacrifices to keep our community safe and healthy. So my hat's off to them. Billy, to your question, I do think looking at this, that the evidence is there that masks reduce the risk of transmission. They protect our community. And I think overwhelmingly, from what I've heard and what I've seen around our community, is that the businesses were looking for that support from our county and from the town government to have that backup to enforce masks and create a safe space within their businesses. That said, I do think it's important to take a step back. Dr. Rydell, our public health officials, they're looking at these things strictly through a public health lens, which is their job. I think it's the job of our elected leaders to balance that with the economic costs, the social costs that come with some of these guidelines and these recommendations. And there, I think we can do better. I've heard from a lot of business owners and community members around our community that say simply, the rules haven't been communicated well. There's a lot of just misunderstanding of what to make of what the rules are and how those are communicated. And even worse, I hear from a lot of people who say that they've offered input or tried to be part of these decisions only to be disregarded or even worse, spoken down to. And I think we need to bring every corner of our community to the table on this so we come out stronger, so that we know what those rules are, so we're keeping our public health in place.
Okay, thank you. We're ready for the next question. And Christian, you will answer first. I'm not sure if Jacob or Robin are going to go next.
I think I'll go ahead and take this one.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Jacob Gore from Buck Rail here. Again, I just want to express my gratitude to the League of Women Voters and the Teton County Library for making this possible tonight, adapting to the virtual platform. You guys did a great job. Moving on, I have lived as a Wyomingite outside of Teton County for 24 years. I think we can all agree it's a pretty unique place in Wyoming. So without further ado, how are issues in Teton County similar to other counties in Wyoming, and how are they different? Additionally, what should the state be doing, if anything, to assist in those issues?
How are issues different here than in other parts of the state? Well, we're blessed with great beauty. This is the most spectacular place that I've ever seen in my life. And I think a lot of other folks feel the same way. And so with great beauty comes great demand. And that demand has put a huge amount of stress on the infrastructure of the place, on the habitat of the place. And one of the things I think is so paramount in every single decision that we make here in this community is to protect that place first. And so, if you're looking at the 2012 comp plan, it's those first 6 words: preserve and protect the area's ecosystem. That is what we have decided as a community is most important to this place and the people that live here. And where I get very concerned with this community is that we have an unprecedented opportunity to model behavior for not only, not for the state so much, but I really just look at the 6 mass extinction and the challenges that are coming down the pike for maintaining the balance between our species and the other species that exist on this planet. And I just come back to this place again and again. And what I see is a singular opportunity to understand the fragility of the balance between man and land. So that's Aldo Leopold's 1949 definition of conservation. And I talk to folks around the country all day long with my work for Shift. And what I hear again and again is that the world out there is not like this. And that means that we have an unprecedented opportunity, but also an unprecedented responsibility to this place to protect it to the very greatest extent that we can. Because if we don't do this, and it's one of the singular places in the world, who will? And if we don't do this now, when? I come back to that again and again.
Greg, it's your turn next.
Thank you. This is a huge question. I'll talk about how are we alike with different parts of the state. We have children that live here that need to go to schools. We have health issues like many other communities. We have conservation issues. We have agricultural issues. We're all going to be dealing with budget deficit at the state level. So I think we're alike in a lot of ways, but there's key differences that Teton County deals with that are quite a bit different than other parts of the state. As Christian mentioned, we are a gem in the world, and conservation is truly important. I personally think that we need to look at another property tax category for conservation easements, and that would be a great conversation to have with our state legislation. I think we need to talk to our state legislators about annexation tools that that we can use that are made for each individual community and allow the community to prosper with those different types of tools. We have an affordable housing situation, you know, with a transient and commuter population. We have a massive affordable housing issue. You know, right now and in the last couple of years, our inclusionary zoning has come up in the state legislation a handful of times, and we need to look at our mitigation levels. We way overshot a couple of years ago, and we need to pull those back. Housing mitigation is important. We have public transportation, the largest public transportation system in Wyoming. That is very important for our community and our commuters and the surrounding region. There's so many things. Tourism. Our economy is based on sales tax. That's very important to us. So again, a lot of things to take to the state legislation.
Natalia, your turn.
Thank you. Could I ask for the question to be repeated again?
Yes. How are issues in Teton County similar to other counties in Wyoming, and how are they different? Additionally, what should the state be doing, if anything, to assist in those issues?
Thank you. This is a really great question. I love this kind of stuff because one of the first experiences I had as a commissioner was going to Campbell County and touring a few different types of mines and a coal-fired power plant. And you can picture me and my husband, the Democrats from Teton County, in the Suburban, following the Suburban with the Republicans in Campbell County. We also ran out of gas on our way to one of the mines because we didn't know the kind of roads that you might have in Campbell County. And we spent 2 days with commissioners in Campbell County. And what it taught me is that everybody else in the state loves their community just as much as we love ours. And they're just as proud of their community as we are of ours. And I think Wyoming's future is perilous. The state's funding picture is perilous. And we have the opportunity to be part of that, but that's only possible if we are willing to extend ourselves and our resources beyond our borders and work together with our neighbors around the state and realize that we are all in the boat together. I think particularly about educating our kids right now and the opportunities for all of us to have information exchange. And so I see it as being incumbent upon us as a community to continue to tell our story out across the state and see how we can help communities that do not have the resources that we have. If we think about the money that was raised in the first 2 months of our emergency response, other communities in the state could not do that. And they couldn't respond with the love and care that we've been able to do. And I think we have an opportunity to be a leader in the state, whatever the issues are. whether it's talking about how our housing solutions can help housing in another community or how we can mitigate the impacts of tourism. I think those relationships and conversations are where we need to start, and that is a job for our elected officials, but it's also a job for all of our residents. Thank you.
Okay, Peter, your turn.
Yeah, well, let me say what I really love about Wyoming is that we are a really small, big state. So growing up, we showed 4-H animals, and so we were always traveling around the state. More recently, my career clocked a lot of miles across Wyoming, and what you sense when you start traveling Wyoming is it's really a small community, and in the same way that we are too. And for me, what I appreciate about that is it creates a sense of accountability where, again, you see your neighbors in the store and there's just a sense that, again, we have each other's backs. It's a very independent state, but out of that, I think, there's a sense that we're really there for one another, and a sense of community. Like the rest of the state, I think here in Teton County, we also face this issue that we've got to diversify our economy. Of course, across Wyoming, that's really come to light in the wake of all things coronavirus, the energy prices collapse earlier this year. I really think puts a focus on that. In the same way, I think we're seeing that we need to invite a greater diversity to our business community here, right? And that boils down to, in my mind, two things. One, we have to address the housing crisis here. If people can't afford to live here, if we can't afford a workforce to be here, there's no way that businesses are going to come and help move in and make Teton County home. And in the same way, right, we have to undo a lot of those burdens that a lot of them are self-imposed on our small business community. And I think a lot of that just starts by having a conversation, bringing businesses, stakeholders to the table, figuring out what we can do, the levers that we can use to make this a business-friendly climate, and having a community-wide conversation about that. So again, I think going back to my original point, we're a small community in a small state, and I really appreciate that.
Okay, Wes, your turn.
Thanks, Steve. Great question, Jacob. I think we are dramatically different in Teton County from all the other counties in Wyoming. For one, I think we have more sushi restaurants than the rest of the state combined. So that's one thing. We talk about Teton County, we have some unique problems. 97% of our land is public. A lot of the land that remains is under conservation. This creates a major housing crisis. We have some of the most expensive real estate in the country. So we have a global effort to come and invest in our community, and that exacerbates the housing crisis. So we have needs that don't exist in any other county in Wyoming when it comes to housing. So how do we deal with those? We create mitigation measures. That's great. I agree with Greg. 2 years ago, I think we overstepped. We went from an average of 25% to an average of 68% in the county. When developers come in and develop properties, that's a dramatic jump too high. And we got pushback from Cheyenne on that, and that was predictable. We have 8,000 commuters a day coming into our community to work. No other county in Wyoming has anything like that. How do we deal with that? My goal is to go to Cheyenne, explain to them what the situation that we're dealing with here, the traffic that we're dealing with on a road like Wyoming 22 from the Y to Stilson, and express we need HOV BRT lanes. That's high occupancy vehicle bus rapid transit. I understand that that's a shocking reality for the rest of the state, but this is the busiest section of road in the entire state, and it requires specific tools that don't exist and aren't required for anywhere else in the state. Finally, we got 4.5 million tourists a year. The lodging tax is the way we get at those tourists. It's the only tool we have. I would go to Cheyenne and ask for a rental car tax as well. I would also ask that we be able to deploy a larger percentage of that revenue to mitigate for the effects of these visitors.
Okay, thank you. The next question is going to be asked by Robin, and Greg, you get to answer first.
Hi, I'm Robin Vincent. I'm the news director at Jackson Hole Community Radio, i.e. KHOL. So unlike many mountain towns, Jackson lacks a climate action plan, though we may have one soon once a revised comprehensive plan is approved. We also lack county staff dedicated to addressing climate change locally. What role should government play in curbing the effects of climate change on a local level?
Thanks, Robin. Great question. Climate change has been near and dear to my heart for a long time. I think when we look at the policies that the town and county have created through the vision of the comp plan, there's a lot of climate change or carbon emissions policy already set in place. But what we need to do is synergize that. And the way I see that is in a couple of ways. A, we need to have people live close to where they work. B, we need to build out our public transportation system, make it more robust. Those two things alone will reduce vehicle miles traveled, VMTs, dramatically. And I think right there, that could be a massive bite out of our carbon emissions. Other steps we could take, we could create a sustainable tourism destination plan. That's something that we've talked about for quite a few years and kicked it around, but nothing has really come out of it. I think that we could be inviting the eco-friendly tourist who wants to have an experience that doesn't necessarily require as much carbon emission as when they come and visit Teton County. Again, there's so many things we could do. I also believe that we could create some level of a white paper that we could give to businesses on how to become more eco-friendly. So we do have a lot of work to do, but a lot of it is right there. We can reach out and touch it. We just got to make it happen. And that's by reducing vehicle miles traveled.
Okay, Natalia, it's your turn.
Thank you. I think that we're in the moment where the community convergence is happening. The government is, of course, an important actor as we develop and set this agenda, but I think we need to see ourselves as one of the partners in setting that agenda, while at the same time getting our own house in order. Teton County adopted an internal sustainability plan, but we have not resourced it appropriately to implement it. A few things that are in there that I think would be beneficial and that I would like to prioritize are moving towards a net carbon neutral fleet and facilities and net zero energy use in county facilities. Our plan has things like green roofs for county buildings, establishing sustainable building best practices. We had a housing RFP recently where one of the respondents was a passive house project. I think we have to embed those principles into our operating and decision-making and policy-making so that it isn't just about the cost, the dollar cost bottom line, but that we have the triple bottom line and sustainability criteria built into our decision-making so that by our actions and our use of taxpayer funds, we are leading the way while also convening and participating in the community conversation that is really going to require everyone to get behind. Thank you.
Okay, Peter, your turn.
Thank you. Well, from the outside, I can say that I think we all live here in Teton County because of the rugged beauty. And I don't think, and a lot of us, our livelihoods depend on it too, right? I don't think anyone disagrees that we need to protect our natural resources and we need to do everything we can to ensure that Teton County is as remarkable as it is now for future generations. I think when we talk about climate change and climate change action, it's just disingenuous if we don't address our housing issue at the same time. 2/3 of our emissions are from vehicle traffic, and that is driven, pardon the pun, by commuters, by people driving over the pass, driving up the canyon. And it's driven by the fact that we have traffic at a standstill idling on our roads because we don't have the capacity to move traffic more efficiently. So I think we have to lean into those issues as we also address climate change, right? It's a package thing. And Robin, to your question, you asked, about creating a staff to execute a climate plan. I don't support that. I think what we've seen time and time again is that government is just inefficient in a lot of things. And what we do when we add more staff, more rules, is suddenly those burdens fall on our business community, they fall on our workers, and they fall particularly hard on the people who can least afford it. Even when we talk about offsetting our, mitigating our efficiencies and things like that, it's a lot easier for somebody who's building a $10 million home to stomach some of those costs versus the working family who's trying to make their rent payment or make their mortgage payment. So I think, again, just stepping back even a little further, right? How do we work with stakeholders across our community to incentivize best practices? I like what Greg said too about, how do we work with communities to create best practices? There's a lot of great organizations within Teton County that are doing good work, energy conservation works, Lower Valley. Let's work with these to create best practices, figure out how we incentivize businesses, residents to make those changes that are really going to help drive the needle on climate change.
Okay, Wes, go ahead.
Thanks for the question, Robin. If you elect me, I guarantee you we're going to have a climate action plan. And I'm going to be pushing hard for a sustainability director. After the last election cycle, I applied to be a member of the START board and a member of the ISWR, that's Solid Waste and Recycling boards. Guess why I chose those two? is to be able to answer this question, because I think this is the most important issue of our age. A few months ago, I had joined the collective that Mayor Pete Muldoon brought together to talk about climate change and to talk about what our role can be, because boy, I'll tell you what, I'm frustrated. I think that there's a lot of people who feel the way I do. I hope there are. I desperately want to be a part of the solution, and I feel like I don't have access to that as a member of this community as much as I wish I could. That's why I became members of those boards, and I'm working hard to give you access. Whether I'm elected or not, I'm going to keep working hard on that. I went down to Park City and I met Luke Carton. He is the sustainability director down there. We had a fantastic 2-hour conversation, mostly about buses. If you know me, I like to talk a lot about buses, but he brought to light to me exactly what a sustainability director can bring to a community. Now, I agree with Peter. We need to be careful. I don't want to hire another position that's 6 figures a year who's not really impacting our decision making. What I would prefer, frankly, is to have our elected leaders take this perspective into account with every decision we're making. When we talk about START in particular, I'm interested in creating a more efficient network. We're also looking at new pricing models so that we have employer-funded passes. This is a very meaningful step to changing behaviors, because now you have commuters who have access to free commuting access with the buses. That leads to behavior changes. Things like HOV BRT lanes, those lead to behavior changes. Let's go get more electric vehicles on the streets. Let's reduce those VMTs.
Okay, thank you. Christian.
Yeah, thank you so much. One of the most pressing issues of our time, and perhaps of all times. And I come back again and again to the leadership that we can model for the rest of the country and the world on this issue. It's something that needs a systemic approach, one that involves the schools, the businesses, our public transportation, our government elected officials. It's got to include our housing issues. It's got to include our building regulations. It has to include our airport as well. In 2014 with SHIFT, we pulled together folks from communities like ours. We call them Gateways to Environments of Major Significance, so GEMS. And there are 74 of them that we identified around North America. And within those GEMS, we looked for initiatives that were They were enacting work that we evaluated on the basis of impact, innovation, and replicability with other stakeholders here in our community. And we identified some fantastic work on, for example, affordable housing and transportation and the wild urban interface. And one of the things I feel strongly about in this community is that all too often we find ourselves talking about the same issues again and again with the same people expecting different results. I don't think that's a recipe that's worked elsewhere in the country. I don't think it'll work here. But we have a singular opportunity to bring folks from other communities like ours that depend on our ecological health for our economic well-being, bring them to Jackson, learn from their examples. These are the best practices in communities a lot like ours from around North America, and use the learnings that they've had to apply to our own situations here and create a model for behavior that's applicable to not only our community, but to the rest of the country as we model how we can be a sustainable community, one that addresses these issues. We have that responsibility. We have that responsibility because of the power of this place, which keeps us here, that we need to protect at all costs. You know, I look at the cutthroat trout and the fact that rivers are going to cause them to go extinct if we do not figure out a way to stop them from warming. That has a direct economic impact on this community. Climate change is a critical issue.
Okay, the next question will be asked by Billy, and Natalia will be the first to answer.
Okay. All right. So Commissioner Epstein has called, I know Natalia, you'll be answering, but Commissioner Epstein has called for shaking up the town and county's joint planning arrangement, asking for a senior planning position that is jointly funded by the town and county to be brought under the county's umbrella. In the course of those conversations, County Administrator Alyssa Watkins said capacity concerns, if there was concerns about getting things done, those could be addressed by adding more staff. But she added, if the concern was about working with the town on joint planning issues, the county might need to reconsider having a joint comprehensive plan with the town. To quote her, she said, if ultimately we don't have interest in having a joint comprehensive plan, that is an alternative for the county. My question for all the candidates tonight is, do you support joint planning and the joint comprehensive plan, and what role should the plan play in planning decisions?
Thank you. I do support joint planning when I look at the decades of collaboration between the town and the county that has produced where we are today. Not perfect, but produced a lot of efficiencies, and I think the realization of community goals, resulting in our 2012 comp plan, which we are still working to implement. I think at a high level, the vision of our community is for us to work together. I did support in the budget looking at additional joint planning staff that is county only, but I think for us to achieve our goals, we have to work together with our partners at the town. It's an efficient use of resources, and it's an effective way to make decisions around housing, around transit, around the provision of service and the level of service to meet the community needs. So I think it's invaluable, and I'm committed to continuing to work on a vision that has us collaborating together. When I imagine what it would be like if the county had its own comp plan separate from the town, I get concerned about exacerbating our inequalities. I get concerned about meeting our ecosystem stewardship goals. And I ultimately get concerned about the integration of our community services and the potential for us to lose access to some of those services for our citizens.
Okay, Peter, you're next.
Billy, thank you for the question. And there's a lot there, and it's a very salient and good question. I think we do benefit by separating the planning responsibilities. There's a lot of gray area, a lot of additional bureaucracy in that overlap. And simply put, a lot of cooks in the kitchen when we start looking at these decisions. There's not clear delineations between jurisdiction. I point to Larry Hune's proposal down in Munger Mountain a few years ago as a good example. It was killed by the town council, not the town, town council, not the county, even though it was very clearly a county project. And I think we really benefit by having, a clear lanes of responsibility of, that's not to say that we don't have collaboration, but clear lanes of responsibility and who has ownership of some of these projects. You're going to hear me say this time and time again. When it comes to housing, when it comes to infrastructure, our greatest risk isn't that we make mistakes along the way. It's that we do nothing at all. And I'll say this, I think it's really important that we have long-term vision. I even support a lot of the goals that are outlined in the comp plan. The problem becomes when we let the rule book trump the results. And too often, I think that's what happens with the comp plan. We've seen time and time again, special interests, individuals in the community say, hey, this doesn't check all 400 pages of the comp plan. We can't let it move forward. And we really need to consider each of these projects based on merit, based on what they bring to our community. And again, let's work with all the private sector, rebuild those relationships. Let's work with landowners and developers to make these projects pencil, but we can't afford to push our housing issue any further down the road. And just to that point, we're at a crossroads right now. We've got two very important proposals in Northern South Park. Now more than ever, I think it's important that we come to the table, we meet those stakeholders and say, hey, what's a common ground? How do we make this work? It's too important for us to punt this down the road.
Okay, Wes, your turn.
Thanks, Dee, and thanks, Billy. So do I support joint planning? Absolutely. I support whatever it takes for town and county to work more collaboratively together. That's one of the frustrations for me. We're one community, and I get really frustrated. I attend a lot of public meetings and follow a lot of the public process, and I get really frustrated with the fact that we tend to, there's different sets of motivations for county commissioners than town councilors and the mayor. And oftentimes those motivations get in the way of those differences in motivations get in the way of real progress for our community. And, as I'm a board member of START, and we derive our power jointly from the town and the county. And how do I put this nicely? We get frustrated frequently by the service to two masters. And for me, whatever it takes to solve that dilemma as a START board member, I'm for, because it's really hard to move the START organization forward when we're dealing with conflict between town and county over different issues. And so, that applies to transit, that applies to housing. When we talk about the comp plan, I agree with what Peter said. I think it's very important to have a vision for our community. I think it's important to think about and consider who we are and what we want to be. And however, when we create such strictness and rigidity in the comp plan, we need to also provide flexibility so that we can have exceptions for things like what Peter was talking about with Larry Hune's Munger Mountain project. Unfortunately, Peter, the town and county were aligned on that. Greg voted against it. 3 of the 5 commissioners voted against it, which, it frustrated me. I didn't think the town belonged in that room either, but the fact is the commission voted against it anyway.
Christian, your turn.
Well, that's I couldn't agree more with Wes on this one. I just look at the water issues that we're up against right now. And we're a sole source aquifer. The contamination of the waters in Hoback is an example of something that it affects one part of our community, but it really has implications for the entirety of it. And the fact that we can't tease out issues that affect all of us and have one body working on them in opposition or in less than efficient ways with the other. So I 100% support working collaboratively with our county members. I don't see how a place like this that is so interconnected could have efficient regulations and efficient guidance from our elected officials without working collaboratively. I support that 100%.
Okay, Greg.
Oh, I guess since my name was in the question, I better answer for this one. So joint planning and a joint planning department are entirely two different things. Since 1978, the town and county have been joint planning our comprehensive plan. I support that. I support that visioning document. I think it's gotten us to a really good spot currently. What I have trouble with is the joint planning department. That was implemented in 2012. So what is it, about an 8-year-old department? My issues with it are, I feel like because the root of the direction for long-range joint planning comes from the town, the county's needs and the county's constituents who don't get to vote for town council or the mayor have to go along with town planning and town planning ideas. And so it was my idea this year to pull our senior long range planner and budget for her, or that position, to be solely in the county. I feel like we have a lot of work to get done. We have natural resource overlay LDRs we need to complete. We have North-South Park, which, just to rebut a little bit against Wes, the reason why I voted against Larry Hune's project was the transit didn't make sense to me and the transportation didn't make sense to me. And I had my eyes on the prize. North-South Park is the place. Let's reduce VMTs. Let's put people near their jobs, near services, near schools. So again, I felt as if we needed to pull away from the town within our own jurisdiction and allow the county, which is a highly functioning board. I'm actually going to take my red card right now.
Okay, you've got 2 more minutes.
Thank you. And let our very capable planning staff and the 5 very capable commissioners work with the landowners and the community and work through a neighborhood plan for North-South Park. It's been, I mean, I'll just be frank, it's been painful, in my opinion, working with the current town council and trying to get anything done jointly. I don't know, about 6-7 months ago, we were discussing housing on Kelly Street over near the rodeo grounds. And essentially, we finally had to come up with a solution where town took on that zoning and that planning, and they gave us the Rains property and allowed us to do with it what the county needed to do. Unfortunately, we prematurely got rid of it, but that's another story. This is the time. The time is now. We have willing partners. We have willing landowners. We have a community that's hurting. We're trying to keep 65% of the workforce in our community. Now, the comp plan prescribes, the current comp plan, not even the new amended comp plan that we're going to be voting on in the next couple months, but the current comp plan prescribes North-South Park as the place for the next set of housing. And I wholly agree, but it's in the county's jurisdiction, and I wholly believe that the county staff and the county commissioners are capable, along with the community and the landowners, to come up with the best plan moving forward.
Okay, thank you. The next.
I'm going to use my red card as well,
Okay.
if I may.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I heard Greg say, he had his eyes on the prize. There's not one prize, and I heard him talk about the urgency of the housing. I agree, absolutely. And I heard him talk about, we have great partners to work with here. We did with Munger Mountain as well. And I agree with Greg. Transit represents a critical aspect to any housing, especially when it's been built 10 miles away from the core of town. But instead of looking at being 10 miles from town and less than ideal in that way, let's look at it as 30, 40 miles away from Etna and Alpine. because that's where these 8,000 commuters are coming from a day. You know, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of partners to work with. And I was in the room that day. We had an opportunity the motion on the table was 100% deed restricted housing for that development. Now, whether Larry would have agreed with that or not, I don't know. But it was an opportunity for the county to assess what is an appropriate restriction for housing built within the county. And we talk about housing with such urgency, and we create this goal of 65% of our workforce housed locally. Well, in order to get that, we got to look under every rock. We got to pursue every opportunity. And imagine the situation today if we had moved forward with that plan, whether Larry had agreed to it or not. We'd have the opportunity now to work with our partners and go to them and say, we had an applicant, you know, a year ago, and this is what we deemed appropriate for that applicant. So we'd have a baseline from which to work right now. We don't have that baseline right now. There's tons of confusion over exactly what the county is willing to do. I agree that this is a better opportunity and that it's close to town, and to stop that project in its tracks just because it didn't have a transportation demand model attached to it when it was that at such an early stage, to me, honestly, it's disingenuous.
Okay, the next question is going to come from Jacob, and Peter gets to answer first.
Thank you, Dee. So I've actually been working here in Teton County as a seasonal worker over the past several years, up until this past March. So naturally, I'm going to ask a question catered towards the subject. It's inevitable that seasonal workers will always be a large part of our economy and community. Often their living and working conditions are not great. And I say working conditions because there's a really high turnover rate with employers, leaving them to sometimes undervalue their workforce. What are steps you would take to make things better for our seasonally employed community? And also, please keep in mind, I'm not talking about just a seasonal employee who's here just over the summer. A good classic example would be somebody who is guiding in the summer and then works for the resort in the winter, someone who may have been here 5 years or so.
Absolutely. Well, I think that speaks to a lot of people in our community. I mean, it is the tale of Jackson Hole, right? Of people who are out here for a summer or for a winter, and fast forward, they're like, wow, I'm here 5 years now, and I think, Jacob, to your question, right? There's one part is how do we make this a place where our workers can live, right? Of a lot of these things, to me, we just boiled down to the simple issue of addressing our housing problem. I think part of that answer, right, is leaning into rental opportunities, knowing that they're a critical part of housing workforce here. How do we make Jackson Hole a better place for our workers? I think there are sacrifices that we all make, right, to live and enjoy Jackson Hole and Teton County. And I venture to guess that a lot of our seasonal workers gladly accept that trade-off for the lifestyle here. That said, too, I think part of it is how do we partner with the business community to make this a place where not only our businesses can succeed, but also our workers. How do we make it so that our businesses can pay livable wages and support their workforce, provide benefits, right? I'll go back to one thing that we struggle with, my wife and I, is our healthcare costs, right? We pay through the nose for our healthcare. When we moved back, my wife was working for the county. We got our benefits through the county, great program. When we left, we again just pay out of pocket, and it is one of our biggest costs, and it's it makes it tough to make our budget meet. One thing that I'd love to introduce, and I plan to if elected, is an affordable healthcare option. There's a great example out of Summit County, Colorado, where the local government initiated it, then spun it off as a nonprofit, so it's not a burden on taxpayers. Basically, they negotiate between the three legs of healthcare to bring down rates. In the first year, they brought down their healthcare costs or their health insurance costs by 20%. Those continue to fall as more and more folks sign up for it. and it just is a simple matter of adding competition here. I think things like that make a big difference when you look at how high our uninsured rate are, how many people.
Okay, your time is up.
Absolutely, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Wes, it's your turn.
I'm tempted to cede some time to Peter. Those healthcare costs are a significant problem, and I'm interested to hear more about what's going on in Summit County, Peter. Thanks for the question, Jacob. I was essentially a seasonal worker for the first 13, 14 years. I was a resident here, and I can relate. It's hard not knowing, that, like Peter said, I think this really is a question about housing, because when we talk about the hurdles that are encountered by somebody who just rolls out here, like I did, like most of us did, coming to Jackson with this dream in our heads that this is where we're going to somehow, stick around for a few years or maybe stick around forever. You run against the wall pretty quickly. That I lived in a garage. I lived in a basement with no windows. It was about 8 by 10 feet. I slept on. I camped for a while. It's the problem for the workforce when the most of what we do with our housing organizations is to provide housing for permanent residents here. So what we're talking about in this question is how do we manage for those people that don't fit that mold. And I think that we're seeing a lot right now. We're seeing a lot of housing. Look around town. There are 6 cranes, 8 cranes. There's major developments going up for dense housing in town. I think that it's worthwhile to take a little bit of a pause when we talk about housing. I know that's a little contradictory, but there's a lot going up. Town has changed its zoning. We've got major density going on in town. We've got hundreds of units coming online in the next year. And I praise the town and county for working so closely with the private developers to get these things built.
Christian, your turn.
You're muted, Christian.
Thank you. Yeah, we all, for those of us who weren't born here, and I'm one of those, yeah, we all had to fight like hell to get here. If you didn't have a bunch of zeros in your bank account, then you had to do what I did, which was, I think I had 23 jobs the first 3 years that I was living here, in part because I wanted to start my own magazine, and they would work a job and then they would quit and publish the magazine and then go on a climbing trip. And I think what this place inspires is that tenacity and that fierceness to stay here, which is a prerequisite to actually living in this place. I think that housing is a key consideration when we're talking about ways to keep people here. We're never going to alleviate that need to fight for it. If you don't have the funds, and it's getting harder every day, if you don't have those extra zeros in your bank account to make a living and make it a home here. But that said, if you look at Northern South Park, you have to commend the Gills. It's the right place. This is where we want to be developing once we're done developing out the density in our community. We really appreciate, I think, the willingness of them to work with this community. And, we really appreciate the points that they're making about St. John's, for example, and the fact that a lot of folks are going to be retiring soon, and how are we going to replace them in the midst of this housing issue? But at the same time, we have to have a master plan for that neighborhood that takes into account so many different issues, right? So among other things, conservation easements to offset the impacts on the wildlife. But we need a diversity of housing options that meet the diversity of the needs of this community. We have to look at the impact of the 24 acres of land that have already been zoned suburban that we're not really talking about, and the 14 adjacent acres with the Lockharts that are also zoned suburban that we're really not talking about, and the east-west connector trail that's going to get punched through the Lockhart's land by eminent domain. These are all issues that we have to take into consideration when we're addressing the difficulty of living here.
Greg, your turn.
Thank you. It is a housing issue. I agree with Wes. Within town, yes, I think there's 6 publicly funded projects along with a bunch of private sector density developments going on right now. The problem there is some of those may be unaffordable for a lot of the seasonal workers. North-South Park, there could be a lot of opportunity there. The county hopefully will get a stab at some zoning that will create density for some level of deed restrictions for affordable and workforce housing. But another area that not a lot of people talk about is the mitigation rates are so high right now that small businesses are unable to organically grow. If you have 1 staff member or 2 staff members and your business is going really well and you need to increase and then you need to have a bigger office, you got to pay mitigation on that. There's not a lot of businesses in this community that can pay the mitigation and then also pay a going wage. So I think we need to have a really big conversation again regarding our levels of mitigation. The other issue with mitigation as it currently stands is it's actually an anti-growth tool. It's not a housing tool, it's anti-growth. And that to me is really unfortunate. And it is definitely not helping the seasonal workers in this community and the people who maybe they started out as seasonal workers. Maybe they came up with a great idea that's turned into a small business. But that small business is always going to stay the same size, especially when you're dealing with office space and physical development. So I think there's a lot to think about there.
Natalie, it's your turn.
Thank you. So in 2020, the Wyoming Women's Foundation produced an updated economic self-sufficiency calculator. And for Teton County, that calculator says that for a household that's 1 adult and 1 preschooler, that adult needs to make $29.70 an hour to be able to afford basic standard of living in Teton County. And so I think we have to be realistic about our cost of living, and we can't talk about our workforce that are driving our tourism-based economy without talking about wages. The county can't implement minimum wage changes, but I think we have to be realistic that that is part of what we are talking about. Other things that I would like to see us do is get intentional about the economic growth that we want to see. We have certainly invested in trying to turn our seasonal tourist economy into stretch those seasons, make it more year round, make it so that people who have seasonal jobs can make a living year round. But at the same time, we have to strengthen our safety nets. So if we don't have childcare, that's the workforce behind the workforce, people can't go to work. And if people are paying twice what the federal standard for affordability is for childcare, they're paying more for childcare for early childhood ed than they are for college, we aren't setting families up for success. I think we should continue to expand on the success we've seen with CWC and expanding careers in culinary and nursing, and find other opportunities to do that. Early ed is another place to do that. And I want to see us partnering, like so many other communities do, economically with people in our community. I don't have a vision necessarily for exactly what that looks like, but I think our moment right now, as we are dealing with the fallout of COVID-19, is presenting us a chance to make some intentional decisions and try to vision a future that doesn't create those disparities.
Okay, it's getting late in the evening. So Robin, do you have some audience questions that we might be able to ask now?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So community advocates, they estimate our Latinx population is around 30%. And not to state the obvious here, but I realize none of the candidates before me are people of color. So please provide examples of how you plan to govern in a way that is inclusive of our Latinx community and our neighbors who are Black, Indigenous, and other folks of color.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. I believe Wes gets to answer that first.
Thanks, Dee, and thanks for that question, Robin. We are living in a historical moment where a lot of us are becoming aware of our privilege. And I acknowledge that we live in a society that is rooted in systemic racism. I work every day to be a better neighbor and friend, and be more compassionate and more committed to doing everything that I can and every decision that I make every day that I live to work to resolve those aspects of systemic racism and discover, frankly, I think about our Latinx community, and I can't help but think of one thing in particular. A lot of them are here because they made a decision to come here without permission, and that to me is not a crime. And they must spend every day in fear. Every time they see an officer of the law, they must have a moment of, oh my God, what can happen? And that's every day. That's a constant pressure that all I can do is imagine it, and I can barely even imagine it. As a county commissioner, how much control do I have over immigration reform? Not very much, but I am here as a commissioner, I am here to recognize those issues. I would love to see us develop some kind of housing where applicants don't feel like they are under review as they apply, so that they are somehow endangering themselves or their families' ability to stay in this country. These people are the backbone of our economy. They're the backbone of our society. It's wonderful what's happening in our education systems as the second generations are able to grow together. And all I can say is we have a lot of work to do, and it starts with acknowledgement.
Thank you. Christian, it's your turn.
Well, this is something I work on every day. With Shift in particular, we're working on just looking at the year's program in particular. We're working on the mental health benefits of time outside, and the folks that are suffering the most from COVID and from some of the systemic racism that we've really seen pulled into stark relief here over the course of the last 4 or 5 months are the most vulnerable among us. And one of the things we're quite aware of is the need to invest disproportionately in communities that have been historically marginalized. So, when we're looking at communities around the country, the ways that they're doing this is ensuring that folks have the opportunities to come into these conversations, come into these working situations, get jobs, even if they mean that they're, creating special opportunities for folks to come in that might historically be kept out of them. I started up this winter something called the Teton Climbers Coalition. And one of the people that I've started it with is a fellow named Sahir Enriquez. So he came here when he was 2 and grew up in this town. And he started climbing at the Teton Boulder Park, which is something I coordinated in 2009. And one of the things that is so interesting about working with him is he says, I didn't see anybody like me that was out climbing here. And one of the things that's really cool is to work with Sahir and try to figure out a way to create pathways into the cultural narrative of Jackson, Wyoming for folks who are the backbone of this community, who are building our buildings, they're washing the dishes, they're changing the sheets, and yet don't see themselves reflected in the story of who we are. But that takes disproportionate investments in those communities that have historically been kept in the shadows. And that's a very intentional decision that as a community, we need to make, to invest in these communities to make sure that they are a formal part of who we are as a town. This is just the American dream. It's the next chapter of the American dream, and we have an obligation to invest in it.
Greg, Greg, you're next.
Yep, thank you. Robin, thanks for the question. we have a long ways to go, but it's pretty amazing to look around this community and you're out on the trails or you're at the ski area and to see the Latinx community participating. And that gives me hope. It gives me hope that kids and parents in that community are able to participate in some of those activities. But like I said, we still have a long ways to go to alleviate the fear that they live with on a constant basis. On a personal note, I was the producer of The Quiet Force, which was a documentary film highlighting the stories and lives of a handful of Latina and Latino folks that live in some different mountain towns, and just really talking about how the Latinx community is the core and the foundation and the backbone of many of these communities, yet they still live in fear. Currently, the county commission just allocated $10,000 to look into our law enforcement, and hopefully that'll turn into potentially some other policies that will help alleviate some of the fear that these people feel. Maybe instead of a badged, uniformed police officer showing up to a medical emergency, it would be fire and EMS or just EMS. Or if there's a mental health issue somewhere, potentially there is some sort of social worker or counselor answers the call to help alleviate some of the issues. There's a lot of questions to be asked in that review, and I 100% support our local law enforcement, but I do think maybe there's some policies that could help our community evolve and alleviate some of that fear.
Okay, Natalia, it's your turn.
Thank you. I believe that we have to start with acknowledging our own privileges and engaging in a lot of deep learning. We have to do this as individuals. We need our organizations and our institutions to do it, and that includes our government. I also think that we need to recognize how our structures and our systems need to evolve to address this urgent priority, and that this isn't work that's going to be completed in 1 or 2 years, but is, or even the term of an elected official. For me personally, doing this work is something I imagine happening for the rest of my life. And so I think that commitment has to start there. When it comes to our governmental institutions, at a bare minimum, I think we should start requiring diverse representation on our appointed boards and commissions so that we can build the pipeline of leadership in this community so that we don't have elected boards that don't represent our community. I think we need to expand the accessibility of our public processes, again, at a bare minimum, by translating our documents and making our meetings more accessible while reimagining what public engagement looks like. I'd like to see us conduct equity audits internally in our organization and start evaluating our policies through an equity lens. Given our role in making decisions about land development, I'm interested in doing work to develop a land acknowledgement so that we could learn from and recognize the Indigenous people who originally stewarded the land that we are all now governing. These are just some ideas to get us started. I don't profess to have all the answers, but I do think that we need to undertake the task of dismantling racism and sexism. We need to include the perspectives of the communities we're talking about supporting in this conversation. And we need to do the individual work ourselves as humans to understand how we have perpetuated and benefited from white supremacy. Thank you.
Okay, Peter's turn.
Yes, thank you. You know, as a community, we've come a long way in terms of diversity and inclusiveness, even since I grew up here as a kid, but we still do have a lot further to go. Personally, I believe a lot of that starts at home, right? By living what we preach, by talking with our kids, by creating a mentality of, you know, even having those tough conversations about our history, about you know, just cultural differences, and building awareness. Again, just starting with ourselves. There's a lot our local government can be doing too, though. You know, I think there's some common sense steps of creating a diversity advisory board that would operate just like any of our other advisory boards to help bridge those divides and bring our different corners of the community into the fold. Natalia touched on this, practical steps of providing government meetings in Spanish, providing meetings in Spanish, so that again, our community is informed, we're bringing those people in. And even as simple as hosting meetings when our community can participate. I know that's something kind of falls on the shoulder of the county clerk, but let's look at hosting meetings after hours when our working families can get there, when they can be part of the process. And I think this is a really important thing to touch on too, is that we need to ensure that residents from all backgrounds are heard when they're part of the process. Again, too often I've heard from people around our community that when they do reach out and try to be involved with decision making and try to make their voice heard, too often they're spoken down to, they're disregarded. And not only does it disservice to everyone, we benefit when our views are challenged, and especially when our views are challenged. Two final thoughts. One, I do think it's really important that we continue to build on our relationships with the nonprofits that fill so many key roles here in our community. I think 122 and others that much more.
Do you want to use a red card to continue?
Sure, let me pull it out here.
Awesome. That's a great red card.
Always be branding, right?
Yeah.
Just to finish, I'll just say that building those partnerships with the nonprofits that fill key roles in our community much more efficiently than our government can and much less cost. I'll leave it there. That I think we've come a long ways, but we do have much further to go. And I look forward to working with all those different corners of our community.
So we hit the hour-and-a-half mark, but if you guys aren't too busy, I think we should take another question. If Billy has one from an audience member, and Christian would be the one to start off.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Let me just pull it up real quick. Okay, the question here, which came in from the audience, is about the Teton County Fairgrounds. And obviously there's been some discussion about potentially moving the fairgrounds and using that land for housing. And the question that came in from the community is, how do you feel about relocating the Teton County Fairgrounds in light of those discussions?
Well, I think what we come back to again and again is this understanding that town as heart is a priority for the community. And we use the fairgrounds quite a bit in the summer and often in the off season as well. But what is our primary need? And I think everybody here agrees that it is housing, that we have to create that density in the heart of the community. So with great respect for the culture of our horses and the folks that are the backcountry horsemen of America that are part of our community, among others, I do believe that we can allocate that space more effectively by dedicating it to housing.
Okay, Greg, you're next.
Thank you. It's an interesting conversation. And as I said earlier, living near where you work makes a lot of sense. But we need to also think about where's the landing zone or the landing space for a new fairgrounds. Without tying the fairgrounds to North-South Park officially, I think that it would be interesting to have a conversation with the landowners and through the North-South Park neighborhood planning process and see if maybe that's an opportune spot for a new Western Heritage Center and giving up that land in town for housing, agricultural. and 4-H community. They brought so much to this community for hundreds of years. And so we need to recognize that. But I think through great messaging, good leadership, we could turn the rodeo grounds into some good opportunity.
Okay, Natalia.
Thank you. I think we have an opportunity to do some good joint planning and find an appropriate location for the fairgrounds. The fairgrounds where they are currently is land owned by the town that the county leases. And so I think it's a great opportunity and we shouldn't be afraid of it and should do some good joint planning. Thanks.
Okay, Peter.
Thank you all. I've had the opportunity to serve on the fair board for the last 3 years. Growing up here, we showed cattle and horses 30 years ago on the fairgrounds. And in that time, I've seen a little evolutions on the fairground itself, a lot of evolution around it. I think you can talk to any of those, those families that are, hauling in horses or livestock to get to the fairgrounds. They'll tell you it's not an ideal location. And you couple that with the value that it holds for just the potential for our community. I don't think anyone would disagree, right, that there's an opportunity to relocate that or to kind of start fresh with a plan for the fairgrounds. Now, like Greg said, I want to be sure that we identify a new location for the fairgrounds. And, I do think that that's really a key part of our heritage as a community. And I want to give that up. I said, again, there's also a great opportunity here to master plan a fairgrounds that isn't just going to cater to, our livestock and those kind of events, but also something that can serve a lot of purposes and be more of a community destination. And so just in short, I absolutely support looking at how we can utilize that, making sure that the fair and fairgrounds are still part of our community.
Okay, Wes.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I echo a lot of what we've heard from the other candidates. We've got a guiding document, town is heart, is a central premise to that. There's a lot of reasons for that I don't need to get into. And that's a huge parcel of land that's centrally located. So when we talk about opportunities to house our workforce in a place that doesn't require them to have, they can walk to town. I mean, this is a heck of an opportunity. Now, like I've heard other candidates say, very important, critical. The first step is figuring out where we can put the fairgrounds. And I don't mean that in a sense of saying, my point is that I recognize the importance of the fairgrounds. I recognize the importance of everything that goes on at the fairgrounds. And I think I agree with Greg. I think it'd be, we should be talking to the owners, the developers of the Northern South Park lots, and see if there's something we can negotiate with them, because I think there's a way to create a synergy here where the town's able to get what it needs and the community's able to get what it needs out of that massive parcel of land in town. It is kind of the heart of the town, or it could become, and the 4-H community and the ranchers and the cowboys get what they need, and have access to a world-class fairgrounds that's maybe a little south of town. So that's how I feel about that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now how about let's go to closing remarks, and Greg would be the one to start with those.
It's been an honor to serve this community over the past 3.5 years, and I can't believe it's flown by so quickly over the course of these 3.5 years. Not only have I served for the community, but my life has changed a lot. I'm a father now, I'm a small business owner, and there's a lot going on in this community that's very important to me. Inclusivity, super important. Health and safety, highly important. Reducing our carbon emissions through reducing our vehicles miles traveled, very important. But also pushing against the status quo to help us get the things our community needs in a timely fashion. There's a lot of people in this community that are having a tough time making ends meet and having a tough time thriving. And I believe we are all in that position to help improve the quality of life in Jackson Hole.
Thank you. Natalia, you're next.
Thank you. About 2 years ago, a man running for governor in Wyoming, not the one that we elected, a different one, told me that women just needed to work harder if they wanted to be paid the same as men. Now, I know that women are working hard, both in the workplace and in all the unpaid work that women do, but somehow it has not been enough. As we look ahead to the world beyond the pandemic, we must not settle into rebuilding what we had because it wasn't working. We must strive for the equitable world that all of our children deserve, where opportunity isn't dependent on the color of your skin, where women receive equal pay for equal work. I'm gonna borrow a minute from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, where parents don't have to choose between safely caring for their children or paying their rent or seeking health care. We must seek justice for those who continue to be forced to live in the shadows. And to do this, we have to be intentional about turning this moment into a revolution for our community that commits to dismantling systemic misogyny and racism. Last year, we celebrated 150 years of women's suffrage. This month, we will celebrate 100 years of the 19th Amendment. And today is the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. I hope as you consider how to celebrate these important milestones in our history, you join me in educating yourself about all the work that still remains to ensure full enfranchisement for everyone. Join me in declaring that 100 more years is too long to wait for equality for women, for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and for the marginalized communities here in Teton County. We have to bring all of the voices to the table in Teton County, in Wyoming, and in our nation. The election this year will define a pivotal moment in our country, and we need decisive and inclusive leaders at all levels of government who will connect us, who will fight for the least among us, and who commit to the challenging work of imagining and creating a brighter future. I hope you'll join me in doing the hard work necessary to achieve a stronger community for all of our friends and neighbors. I truly believe that if we want to make our nation and our state better, we have to start at home. So on August 18th, I ask you to vote Natalia Macker for Teton County Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Peter, you're next.
Yeah. Well, thank you again to the League, to our media partners, to the library, and to all those who are watching tonight. I'll say again, my purpose in running is very simply to represent our working class families and to ensure that we can create a place where our kids can call home here in Teton County. We're at a crossroads right now. We are, sorry, I've got a visitor here. Sorry for the interruption. We're at a crossroads here of setting a course for our community. We know that the status quo is closing the door on our working class. It's creating a gated community. And even if we've got a toehold in right now, looking at our future generations, how are we going to make this a place that they can call home? I look at every issue that we're facing through that lens. And more than anything, we have an urgency to act. We can't afford to kick these issues down the road anymore. We have to make those hard decisions. We have to lean into the opportunities at hand. I'm running to embrace those opportunities, to fight for our working class, and to make this a place that our kids can call home.
Thank you. Wes, it's your turn.
Thanks. I want to thank the League of Women Voters, the library, the media panel, the other candidates. I thought everybody did a great job. And most importantly, those of you paying attention out there who are doing the best you can to inform your votes. I've learned over the last few years that being a good citizen is hard work. And I really appreciate you taking the time to do that work tonight. I'm a candidate who is committed to change. I'm committed to action. I'm capable of making big decisions, and we need to move this community forward. I have an urgency, whether it comes to housing or climate change or race relations. Yesterday is the time for these changes to have happened, and I am committed to making these changes happen on your behalf. I hope tonight has given you some good insights into who I am and what I stand for. To learn more about the issues we discussed tonight and more, please visit my website, gardnerforcommissioner.com. And I am open to discuss any issue with anybody anytime. My phone number is 690-4209. Again, my name is Wes Gardner. I'm running for Teton County Commissioner, and I hope to have your vote come this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Christian, it's your turn.
Thank you. I've fallen hopelessly in love with this valley, and I'm doubly fortunate to share that love with my wife, Jovanina Anthony, and our 9-year-old daughter, Soleil. To be able to live here, to raise a family here, and watch them weave themselves into the fabric of this community, and then talk about it over dinner at the kitchen table, that's a privilege. With great privilege comes great responsibility. The responsibility to make sure future generations have that opportunity too. This valley has given me everything I care about: my family, my friends, my home. It's why I'm running, and it's why I'm ready to fight for the people who have called Jackson home for generations, or who came to Jackson for just a summer or a winter and never left. We're not a normal town. The people who make Teton County their home, they're not normal either. That's what I like the most about them. A place this beautiful and characters this special deserve a spectacular community. So give me your vote, and I'll fight like hell to make this community as singular as its surroundings. Come with me, fight with me, and we'll build a place that keeps taking our breath away. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for attending tonight. This was fabulous. I really appreciate the time that you've taken, and good luck to everybody. And that's it for tonight. Thank you.